Have you ever had a moment where your child swears or says something mean to you and it just hits, not just on the surface, but somewhere deeper in your body? Maybe they said, I hate you, you're the worst, F you, or it's all your fault. And in that moment, everything inside you shifts. You feel the jolt, the tightening in your chest, the heat rising, and your mind goes to, how can they talk to me like that after everything I do for them? And maybe part of you knows that they're dysregulated, that this isn't personal, that they don't mean it. But another part of you feels hurt, angry, unappreciated, and like something about you is being hijacked. And that's the part we don't talk about enough because this isn't just about your child's behavior, it's about what their words activate inside of you. And if you've ever found yourself thinking, why does this affect me so much? Why can I stay calm sometimes but not others? And why does this feel so personal even when I know it's not? Then this episode is for you because today we're going to unpack what's actually happening inside of you in those moments, not just in your child, but inside of you. And we're going to look at how to shift out of taking it personally without ignoring the behavior, without suppressing your feelings, and without needing to become a perfectly calm parent. Because what if your child's words aren't a reflection of your parenting, okay, but a reflection of something happening in their nervous system? And what if the intensity of your reaction isn't a failure, okay, but something that actually makes sense? So let's get into it. Okay, so there was a time when my son was moving from a more internalized PDA, which is pathological demand avoidance. He was moving from this more internalized PDA expression to a more externalized one, where his verbal outbursts were becoming more intense. Okay, so he was like shouting the F word a lot and that was starting to become a very normal everyday experience. And it annoyed me a little bit, okay, but I tried to let it go, okay? I could remember how I would swear as a teenager when I was upset. And even though he was only 11, I had some understanding that this was frustration coming out. But then one day something shifted, okay? He had been trying to control me, like when I could go to the bathroom and when I could eat, and I could feel my own agitation rising. And I reached a point where I tried to set a boundary and I said calmly as I could, I said that it wasn't okay for him to control my basic needs. And that attempt at a boundary sent him spiraling. But this time it wasn't physical. Okay. So usually in the past, he would really lash out physically. This time, though, it was verbal, saying, F you, I hate you, you're a horrible mom, and some other things I don't remember at this point. And even though I knew that this reaction made sense, okay, it still hit me in a way that I didn't expect. Okay, I could feel it. This instant jolt in my body, this tightening in my chest, the heat rising, the thought flashing through my mind, how can he talk to me like that? And underneath that, something even more tender. That hurt. Okay. So, not just on the surface, it landed somewhere deep because in that moment, it wasn't just about the words, it was about everything behind them. Here I was, okay, rearranging my whole life, trying to do everything to help my child, trying so hard to give him what he needed, accommodating him in ways that were depleting and exhausting for me. And yet, in that moment, it felt like none of that was seen. Okay, none of that was felt, none of it was seen. There was just anger and blame and words that cut into me. Okay, so if you've ever been on the receiving ends of words like this from your child, you know exactly what I'm talking about because this isn't just about what they say, it's about what it brings up inside of you. And I asked the parents in my course community, okay, for my regulation rebuild course. I asked the parents in the community because I wanted to do a little more research on this. I asked them what happens in moments like this for you, because this is a common occurrence in our community of parenting, and the responses were incredibly consistent. Okay, so there was shame, okay, around this. There was an embarrassment, especially if it happened in public. There was hurt, okay? The words did hurt most of these parents. There was anger about the words, right? And the way the child was behaving. There was exhaustion around it, okay? And there was fear that this might never change, okay? And then something that came through so clearly is that many parents said, I know what this behavior means, but I can't always let it go. Okay. So sometimes they could see it as dysregulation, and sometimes they could stay grounded in the face of it. And then other times they were pulled in completely, okay, into their own reaction, right? And that's the part that matters here, because this isn't just about understanding your child and what's going on with them, although we're going to talk about that. It's also about what gets activated inside of you when this happens. Okay. It's important to understand and gain awareness about that so that you can have clarity in these moments, and then it'll help you to better regulate. So let's talk about what gets triggered inside of you, okay? When your child swears at you and calls you names or says mean things, tells you that they hate you, it's not just one thing happening inside of you, okay? It's layers. There's layers of things that are getting triggered here, and they happen fast. So at times, this is why at times it can become, a very hurtful and overwhelming experience, and other times you can like understand it and regulate in the face of it. Okay, so the first thing that gets triggered, which is like deeply wedged in all of us, I feel like, is this belief about respect. Okay, so for many of us, we were raised with some version of children shouldn't talk to their parents that way, right? Okay, I'm sure you can relate. Children shouldn't talk to their parents that way. So when it happens, something in you reacts immediately that this is not okay. And then that creates an internal reaction of alarm, right? Because your mental models have an idea of how children should behave towards their parents. And so then that belief and expectation about respect gets triggered. Okay. The second thing that gets triggered is this pressure to fix it by teaching. Okay. So then this is what happens next, right? Oh, I can't have my kid being this way, right? I got to teach them this is not okay, right? So then there's this urgency inside, like, I need to stop this. I need to teach them this isn't okay. If I don't correct this, then I'm failing as a parent. Okay. And then that urgency can feel intense because it feels like something bigger is at stake than just this moment, right? And this is when it becomes about you. Okay. Even more so here, this next thing that's triggered is the meaning, okay, that gets triggered in these moments is that I'm not a good enough parent. And then you go to, what am I doing wrong that my kid talks in this way to me? And why is this happening? And then now it's not just about behavior, it becomes about your worth, right? You're being a good enough parent. And then the other thing that gets triggered here are that there are old wounds that got touched. Okay. So when somebody's like mean to you, right, or somebody goes at you, like there's old wounds can get triggered in that, right? And especially if it's your child, because you love them so much. So it's like a relational rupture and relational traumas of the past can get triggered here. Okay. So this is where things deepen a little bit and hit harder, because the moment is not just about the present. It reaches back into your childhood, into maybe how you were spoken to by your parents or, bullies or whoever else growing up, right? And also into what you came to believe about yourself, that if you behaved a certain way as a child, right, and you got negative feedback or a lack of love for it, then you came to believe or took on beliefs about yourself like, I'm bad, I'm not enough, I'm too much, right? Or also general beliefs, right? That we take in, that people who speak this way are bad or disrespectful, people who say mean things are horrible. So when your child says something harsh, it can trigger those beliefs with the vulnerable emotions that go along with them. And then suddenly this moment feels so much bigger than it is. Okay. This is where I hear parents like really start to feel like a lot of shame that gets triggered in these moments, a lot of like a deep hurt and grief. Okay. So those vulnerable emotions that can get triggered here. And then what also can get triggered here is this feeling of losing control. Okay. There's often this is a very quiet but powerful layer, right? This feeling of like if you can't get your child to change speaking in this way, right? This feeling like I can't stop this. This keeps happening. I don't know what to do, right? And then that can feel deeply unsettling in the body. Right? The nervous system needs to feel like it has some sense of choice and agency and control in order to feel safe, right? And when it feels like our kids are so out of control and we can't do anything to change it, it leaves us feeling out of control too. Okay. And when you start to see, so these are all the layers, right, that get triggered. And when you start to see all of these layers together, it becomes clear that a lot can get activated inside of these intense moments. Okay. And this is why awareness matters, right? We want to bring light to the beliefs, the conditioning, the past experiences that are getting triggered, right? The expectations from conditioning and programming, right? All of that that's getting triggered. Okay. And we want to shine light on them. Because when we really see what's getting triggered inside of us, it can loosen its hold on you. Okay, it can create just a little bit more space between what your child is doing and what it means inside of you. Okay, and then from that space, you can begin to see the behavior more clearly for what it actually is. Okay, so let's move to that next. Okay, although most of you probably understand this to some degree, let's just take a moment here to just see our child's behavior from a nervous system lens, okay? Just to help you gain some clarity and a newer context of what may be happening for them when they are speaking in this way to you or others, okay? And because when we update the context in the nervous system, like update the context about from the nervous system lens, what this means, it can help immensely for you to be able to handle the situation with more understanding and regulation. Okay. So sometimes the swearing and mean language is not just behavior, right? Like behavior is such a loaded word, but okay. So behavior can often come from our state. It can come from like then patterns as well that are wedged in over time, right? When repeated multiple times. But in this case, a lot of this behavior of like speaking meanly and swearing is coming from the fight flight system, right? And it's fight energy trying to move through the system. Okay. So, but instead, with our kids now, instead of using their body to hit or push or become physically aggressive, your child may be using words as a way to discharge that accumulating fight energy in their body. Okay. So it's like, think about it like stress mounting, right? Stress load is mounting in their system and they have all this fight energy of the stress energy mounting and they need to get it out. They need to get it out. So it's like a volcano about to erupt. And so instead of using the physical body to get it out, they're actually using their words now. Okay. So this helped me to see see it in this way because I realized my son was not using his body to hurt me and this was a good thing. Okay. Now the energy, but that energy, right, that he was holding inside still needed somewhere to go and it was coming out through words now. And although, that didn't make the words feel good, of course, but it did make them feel more understandable because in nervous system understanding, story follows state, okay? And your ability to be a certain way with others depends on the state you're in, okay? So the mean things our kids say really come from the state they're in, and not from their true self. So it tells us a lot that, oh, they're not in their higher thinking brain right now. They're not in the ventral, what's called the ventral vagal, the calm, relaxed, alert state. They're in fight flight. So when you understand the nervous system from this lens, then it can perhaps just allow you to allow that this is here, right? And they're using words as a way to get that energy out. Okay. So remember, this is accumulated fight energy. Okay. Energy has been building in their system, right? Frustration, overwhelm, perhaps they had blocked impulses of things they wanted to do or say, or our children hold in their own impulses all day, especially if they're going to school, right? They get repeated no's. And then they have a fight or flight response and they hold it in, right? And eventually that stress load mounts and then they spew it all out on you because that energy has to get out, right? And they don't have a safe way to move it through the body. So when it comes out fast, intense, and often directed. And sometimes you'll notice like they just know exactly the right thing to say that can hit you so deeply, right? And then another thing I want you to understand about this behavior is that underneath all that fight energy, there is something even more vulnerable that our kids are feeling, and that is shame. Okay. So fight energy comes in to protect us from feeling the shame. Okay. So for many of our kids who are highly sensitive, reactive, neurodivergent, there is a lot of shame in their system. Okay. They often know that things feel harder for them, that they struggle more, right? That their reactions impact others, that they are too much or not enough in some way. And even if they don't say it directly, their nervous systems carry it. Okay. And shame is a very hard state to be in. It pulls the system towards what's called the dorsal shutdown, or more of a collapse state, right? This heaviness, disconnection, this feeling like I am bad. Okay. So then what does the system do? It doesn't want to stay in that dorsal collapse, right? So it's going to try to move you back, what's called moving up the ladder, back up to the ventral vagal calm, relax, alert, but you have to go through fight, flight first, right? So it's trying to move them. It's trying to move them out of shame and back into fight energy, right? Which is the anger, the blame, the attacking language. And so this is the way the system is trying to protect the child from feeling the shame. Okay, because it's easier for the system to say, to use that, to be in fight energy and to point the energy outward and say, this is your fault. I hate you, right? That it's easier to do that than it is to drop into something's wrong with me. Okay, so in those moments, what can look like defiance or disrespect or like really mean behavior may actually be a nervous system trying to protect itself from a much more painful internal state. Okay, so these are the two things I really try to keep in mind when my son is in this fight state, directing that intense fight energy towards me with words. I really try to, and I invite you to really try to look at your child from this lens. That there are two things happening here. One, there's a lot of fight energy to get out, and two, there is pain being triggered inside, usually in the form of some sort of shame. Okay. Okay. Now, just for a moment, we can talk about, why public moments, like, so when your child does this in public, why that feels even harder. Okay. So many parents, I find, like they notice that they could hold more capacity at home, right? When this behavior shows up. But in public, oh my God, everything changes. Okay. Because now it's not just about your child's behavior, it's about being seen, okay, being judged, feeling like other people are watching and thinking, why can't this parent control their child, right? And then that can create a different kind of activation, right? This super urgency, this deeper shame within you that's getting triggered, and there's the stronger pull to fix it quickly. Okay, so in these moments, the pressure to teach or correct the behavior can feel even stronger, right? So this is important to notice, right? You may feel like you need to show others that you don't stand for this, that you're doing something about it, right? And that you're still a good parent by taking action to control your child in some way. And that's such an uncomfortable place to be. I totally get that, okay? And what I found is that the work here is in these moments, okay? It's not really about managing the moment perfectly because that's a rarity in this case. So just let go of that. Okay. It's about what's happening inside of you. It's about slowly letting go of the weight of what others might be thinking. Okay. And that's not easy, right? In public. And more importantly, it's about building this deeper felt sense inside of you that you feel like, okay, I'm still a good enough parent, even when my child behaves this way in public. So in a sense, like you're not really caring what other people think. Okay. And that's not easy to do. But really, in those moments, there has to be some sort of boundary put up. Like, I don't care what other people think. Right now, my number one goal is to neurocept safety to my child and notice that, okay, this is fight energy that needs to get out. How can I help them get it out in a safe way? Or help them exit the situation, right? To get it out somewhere else. It's not easy and it's not going to happen perfectly. But if you feel like, okay, I'm a good enough parent, even if they behave this way in public, it helps immensely for you to stay regulated to handle that challenge. Okay, now the other area I want to talk about is with siblings, okay, because this comes up all the time with parents. And I often hear parents say, I don't want my other child or children thinking that this is okay. Okay, and this is such a real and valid concern, right? Okay, for those of you who have multiple children, you get this. You want to set an example and you want to guide them, right? You want to guide your kids and you want them to know what's okay and what's not, right? And that matters. But here's the gentle shift, okay? In the moment of dysregulation, okay, your child who is swearing is not in a place where they can learn, right? Okay, I think most of you get that. And your other child, okay, they're not, here's the key, okay? They're not just listening to what you say. In fact, they're taking in something much deeper than what you're saying. They're reading the room, they're sensing your tone, your body, your energy, okay, the level of safety or tension. They're learning what happens when things feel out of control. Okay, they're learning what happens when someone loses it. They're learning what happens in the face of harsh words and big emotions and disconnection. Okay, and this is why your response matters so much more than your words in that moment. Okay, really not about teaching in that moment. Okay, because when you move into urgency or correction or escalation to try to teach or show that this isn't okay, what they actually feel is more threat. Okay, they feel more tension. So then their nervous systems are pinging along with all of this. Okay, they're feeling it, right? The siblings, they're feeling more threat, more tension, more activation in the system. But when you stay as grounded as you can, okay, when you don't take the words personally, and when you hold some steadiness in the face of that moment, you are showing them something powerful, okay? That big emotions can be held, okay? That harsh words don't have to lead to disconnection or escalation on your part, and that someone can stay steady even when things feel intense. Okay. And then they feel that because within the family, everybody's nervous systems are pinging together. Okay. And then they feel that. Okay. Even if nothing is said out loud. Okay. Because nervous system to nervous system, we're reading cues. We're always reading cues. Okay. So this doesn't mean that you're saying that the other child's behavior is okay. Okay. And it doesn't mean that there are no boundaries if you need to set a boundary here, but it means that you are prioritizing safety first for everyone. And then later, when things calm and when everyone's nervous system has settled, that's when you can repair, go have teaching moments, and say something like, well, that wasn't kind. And when people feel really upset, they can say things that they don't mean, or, we still speak kindly to each other. Okay. And now that what you're saying, right, or teaching can actually land with them. right? Because you've modeled speaking kindly to the other sibling, or you've modeled safety in the face of their escalation. And then your other children start to feel safe in the face of it too. Okay. Because it's coming from a system that doesn't feel under threat, right? That feels more safe. Say, and then their system is not in threat, and their system is safe enough to receive it. Okay. Okay, so let's get into the reframes that change everything. There are two reframes, okay, that make a profound difference in these moments. Okay, and reframe number one is about your child, reframe number two is about you. So reframe number one is my child is to really, when your child does this behavior, okay, is you say to yourself, my child has excess fight energy that needs to get out. Right? This is what I say to myself when I see my son spewing out these words. I just look, okay, this is expected. This is excess fight energy that needs to get out, right? So if they're swearing, blaming, or attacking you with their words, okay, it doesn't mean that they're bad. It doesn't mean they don't love you. It means something in them does not feel safe. And sometimes that lack of safety is showing up as fight energy that needs to move, okay? And it is so common for our kids, remember, to mount stress load all day and hold it in. Okay, we do that, right? Our kids do that, and all those fight instincts that were held in, they need to be let out. And this is energy that is trying to discharge from the body, and it is coming out through words. So instead of like, how could they say this to me? As soon as you catch yourself going there, see if you can help yourself feel safe. And then the shift becomes, oh, okay, they have fight energy that needs to move and get out. So I'm not going to take this personally. They have fight energy that needs to move and get out. And if you can help them move that energy in a physical but safe way, then great, right? Like sometimes I say, okay, there's a lot of, I don't say you, right? Because my son doesn't like that, but I'll say, okay, there's a lot of energy here. And I don't even label the energy as angry energy. I'll just say, okay, there's a lot of energy here and it's okay. It needs to get out. I'm okay with it. You can get it out, and and usually that in itself helps my son to not do it with his words. And then as soon as he starts to calm down a little bit, I invite in like, oh, I'm going to shake this off a little bit, just to model to him. Okay. So if you can get them to do something more physical, some kind of movement to get this energy out on a daily basis. So this is more preemptive, right? On a daily basis, you have them move and help them get out aggressive energy by doing more like aggressive movements in a safe way, then that stress load doesn't accumulate as much and can be let out of the body. Okay, so reframe number two, okay, is about you. My child's behavior does not determine my worth as a parent, right? So this is about like, I'm good enough, even if my child is behaving this way. Okay, so this is really important because even if you understand your child, right, if their behavior becomes a reflection of your worth, then your system will react, right? And this is so hard to like disentangle this. We all feel like our children's behavior is a reflection of our worth because we're the parent and we're supposed to be responsible, right? That's the story we tell ourselves. That's the conditioning and programming. So in those moments, there's often this quiet voice saying, I'm not good enough. I'm failing. I should be handling this better. Okay, so become aware of that going on underneath the surface, right? And the reframe here is to say to yourself instead, consciously, I am still good enough. I am still worthy. I am still lovable. I am still safe. And I am still successful as a parent, even if my child has this behavior. Okay. So when you can hold both of these reframes, the one for your child and the one for yourself, right? My child's nervous system does not feel safe right now and has fight energy that needs to get out. And the reframes, I'm still a good enough parent, right? My child's behavior does not equal my worth. And something softens, something opens, and there's just a little more space and more capacity to be okay with this challenging moment. Okay, so let's talk about what this looks like in practice. Okay, so I teach this in my course. I practice this all the time, right? So what do you do in these moments? Your child is swearing, and I already mentioned the two reframes to try to hang on to, right? And that's the mind approach. Um, but how do you do that? Well, first of all, okay, it's about letting go of the fight with what's happening right now, right? And just letting go with the fight with how your child's behavior is right now, instead of resisting it, fighting it, letting it go for now, and allowing what is. Okay, so this allowing what is practice, it's kind of like radical acceptance in the present moment, right? So I teach this as a practice of allowing what is, and it's not allowing it forever. It's not condoning the behavior. Okay. It's just allowing that this is here for this moment. And that helps you to let go of trying to control the behavior, right? It helps you to drop the fight with reality. Okay. And then you do the U turn in these moments. Every time you're triggered, you do the U turn and you come back to yourself and you notice what's happening inside of me. Okay, you notice the sensations of the activation, right? The tightness, the heat, the urgency to react or to teach or to control. And you just notice it, okay? And be with it. So it's a process of being with it, becoming the curious observer of it. Notice it, okay? And then that alone begins to create some space for you. So you don't have to do anything about your child's behavior right now, just focus on yourself, okay? And then you allow what is happening inside of you too, right? So we're not only allowing what's happening outside of us, we're coming back in, noticing what's happening inside of us and allowing what's happening inside of us too. Okay. So you're noticing what getting triggered inside and you allow it to be there. Oh, that makes sense. Right. So I always say, okay, this makes sense that this is here, of course. And I be with it, right? Whatever's here, I notice it. The anger and the hurt underneath it, the shame underneath it, the urge, the fight response, the urge to fix or defend or control. Okay. Let it all be there without taking any action from it. Okay. And then bring in some self compassion, because in these moments, there is hurt getting triggered. Okay. And if you can hold space for the hurt, then your own fight and control energy is not going to come out and take over. Okay. Because, and in these moments, you're going to have this voice, other voice, right? The inner critic voice in your head saying, you should be handling this better. And other parents don't deal with this, or you're failing, right? So instead, gently offer yourself something different, right? This is the healing experience that the nervous system needs in the present moment, not the criticism wired into you from past conditioning, but the self-compassion of the present moment, which is an incredible regulating tool, right? So you could put your hand on your heart and say, this is really hard right now. Of course, this is bringing things up in me. Okay, I'm allowed to feel this. I'm still a good parent, even here right now. Okay. So this is speaking to yourself kindly, offer yourself words of compassion for your struggle that's happening in this moment. Okay. One distinction I want to make about allowing, the practice of allowing, is it does not mean that there's no boundaries. Okay. Sometimes you do have to put a boundary in place, right? So allowing your child's expression in the moment, it doesn't mean that anything goes. It doesn't mean that you accept harm or mean that you don't step in when safety is needed. Okay. It does not mean that you don't guide or teach later on. Okay. It means you're choosing not to escalate the moment while your child is dysregulated. Okay. This is one of the challenges we all face when we're triggered, right? Is our fight meets their fight, which makes sense because you're designed to feel their fight energy. But then what happens is your own fight energy gets mixed in with that, and mirrors back the fight energy to your child, when we really want to be not escalating the moment. We want to be mixing our ventral vagal, our safety and our calm, with their fight energy that we're feeling, and then mirror that calm back to them. Okay. So in these moments, it really means that you're prioritizing safety first, right? You're not you're not like condoning, accepting harm and not stepping in if safety is needed, but you are prioritizing safety in yourself first and bringing safety to your kids first. Okay. And then when regulation returns for everyone, then you can hold boundaries and guide and repair and teach. Okay. And then you want to come back to your child, right? So in practice, right, you want to allow, do the U-turn, hold space for yourself, hold self-compassion, right? And then you want to come back to your child, okay? Not to teach, not to correct, but to help bring the moment back towards safety in a way that works for them. Okay. And then later you want to teach later. Okay. When there is more connection on board. Okay. When things are calm, and then that's when you can guide and explain and repair. Okay. So, there will be times when you still react, right? When your child does this behavior. Of course there will. We're human. Okay. And it's because this depends on your capacity that day, right? Your stress levels, your trauma history, what's already been building in your system. Okay. This isn't about getting it right every time. Okay. It's about slowly building the ability to stay with yourself a little more, okay, in moments that used to completely take you over. So I just want to set that realistic expectation. So when your child says things like, I hate you, you're a horrible parent, F you, it can feel deeply personal, yes. Okay. But remember, it's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of a nervous system that has too much built up fight energy and doesn't yet know how to release it safely. Okay. And your work in that moment is not to control the behavior from your own fight response. It's to stay connected to yourself, right? And help that fight energy inside feel safe, right? And help yourself remember the two reframes that this is fight energy moving through my child, and I'm still a good enough parent, even if my child behaves this way. Because from that place, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be steady enough to stay with yourself. And over time, that steadiness becomes something your child can begin to feel too. So if this helped you, if in any way, please share, please comment. I love to hear your comments. And thank you for being here.